Ideas shape the world. They give meaning, direction, and possibility. I'm Willie Pietersen, former CEO, Columbia professor, and author of Leadership: The Inside Story, an exploration of the principles that have shaped my leadership journey. Some ideas last for centuries. Others emerge and redefine how we lead. This is Ideas That Matter.
Willie, welcome to another episode of Ideas That Matter. Today we're going to talk about a really fascinating topic in my mind: how to build a winning proposition in a competitive market. In past conversations, you mentioned that the central idea of strategy is a winning proposition, and it becomes the rallying point for the entire organization, so everybody knows what the strategy is. In this conversation, I'd like to explore and get some examples of winning propositions. But if you could, let's just start out with reminding us, what is your definition of a winning proposition?
Yes, just to recap that's an important thing. When we talk about a winning proposition and tell our organization, tell the executives to go and create a winning proposition, if we don't give them a definition, they won't know what that means. And it's certainly not a value proposition. That's not enough in a competitive world. Just offering value is a bit like saying, when you ask about the weather, what do we have today? Well, we have temperature. Well, of course we know that, but how much? So it's always a question of how much value, right? That's the idea of a winning proposition. So here is the definition of it that I think is a good working definition for people. Creates a high bar. And here it is. What unique benefits, emphasis on unique, will we offer our chosen customers that gives them a compelling reason to choose us, right? Customers have choices. Why should they choose us? And that only comes from offering a unique benefit. Now, there are only two ways of being unique in the world. And as we ask our people to develop a winning proposition, we need to bear this in mind. First way of being unique is doing something that nobody else is doing. Now, that typically doesn't last very long because people copy you. When there's a honey pot, the bees will come, as we know. And then there's a second way of being unique, which is doing what others are trying to do, but doing it measurably better. Customers love that. So we should never say, well, everybody's copying us now, there's no winning proposition. There always is. Let's take Amazon in its retail business, online retail business. I watched an interview of Jeff Bezos, and somebody asked him, what's the magic sauce? My words, winning proposition. What makes you so successful? And his first statement was kind of very economical. And he said, we make it easy for people to buy things. Okay, that's pretty compelling. I mean, ease of buying things. You can buy them at night in your own time. You don't have to run around and go to shop at various places and they say, I'm sorry, we're out of stock. We don't have your size, and all those frustrations. We make it easy. But the interviewer then said, in what ways do you make it easy? And the answer was, we offer a wide range of products at great prices, not necessarily the lowest, but at great prices, with fast and reliable delivery. So think about Amazon's merchandise. They started selling books and then they broadened it. You can buy exactly the same merchandise at whatever major retailer you wish to shop in. You can buy it at Walmart. Any other mass merchandiser will have the same array of products. There's nothing different about their products. What differentiates Amazon is their service model. It's the pleasure that customers derive from this convenience of shopping, looking at a broad array of options, choosing what you want. One click, there it is. And they say if you've got Amazon Prime, it's not inexpensive, but you can order all year long. You can order 5 tons of merchandise if you want with free delivery. That's a great deal. And you get 48-hour delivery. Every now and again, there's an exception. But what I've experienced every now and again is that they send it in 24 hours. And you get this nice surprise. Here's my merchandise. And it's arrived even faster. I mean, I once ordered a book on Amazon at about 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and by noon the next day it was on my desk. And I was busy with something else, and I almost said, I'm not ready for that yet. But, that who's not ready for a fast delivery? So that's a kind of, and look how successful they are. It's a very simple winning proposition that says, okay, we sell the same stuff as everybody else, but we're going to create a margin of difference in the value that we offer customers. And that's going to be the swing factor in our success.
Okay, so you talk about unique benefits, and it's like beauty, value is in the eye of the beholder. It's an individual thing. What do you just say to somebody and they say, if they respond with, we just sell commodities. I mean, we are just pure commodities through and through.
I hear that all the time. It's kind of a cry of despair. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, let's declare defeat here. Because they either say, well, we're actually in a commodity. I mean, auditors will tell you that. I do an audit. My competitors do an audit. It's a commodity. And either they say we're in a commodity or we're getting into a commoditized market, almost as an excuse. Our market is becoming commoditized. Now, I have a response to this. My response is, it's the wrong way of thinking. The right way of thinking is to declare to yourself, and it's real, it's not a make-up story, there is no such thing as a commodity. There's always a way to create a margin of difference for customers. Now, I can prove this with examples. You see, on either end of any transaction are human beings with needs and feelings. In many ways, you can say Amazon's selling commodities because it's the same product as everybody else, but they're much more successful. I was running Lever Brothers Foods business in the USA at one point, and then got very involved in the futures market in soybeans, because soybeans was an ingredient in making margarine. We bought soybeans, went through our oil mills, and then went through the refining system, and then into the margarine manufacturing system, sort of a vertical integration. And at one stage, my broker in Chicago Board of Trade, said to me, oh, you've now become the largest buyer of soybean futures in the world. Well, that scared me. So, well, if I make a mistake, it's going to be the biggest one in the world, right? So I was very careful about following the advice of this broker. I did a bit of research, and I found that all of the brokers on the futures exchange in Chicago sell the same things by law. If you buy pork belly futures or orange juice futures or soybean futures, by law you're selling the same as everybody else. You can't sell a different product. Yet some brokers on that exchange are more successful than others over time. Why is that if they're selling the same stuff? That began to intrigue me. And then we acquired another company. And the president of this company said, well, we've got a broker in Chicago. You've got a broker in Chicago. We don't need 2 brokers. We have to pick one. And I remember saying to him, Tom, pick one, spin a coin. What does it matter? He said, well, our broker is pretty good. I said, I think mine is as well. He said, would you meet with ours? The guy was called Russ Danson. He flew from Chicago. I said, as a courtesy, I said, of course I'll meet with Russ. And I told my assistant, Jane, at the time, I said, if the meeting goes more than 45 minutes, Jane, would you run into my office and say, there's a phone call from Moscow? And so I could end the meeting, because I thought it was just going to be a routine thing. Anyway, Russ was a delightful guy. And we had some pleasantries, and then he started with a question. He said, Willie, why do you buy futures? Well, I was irritated by the question, simply because I didn't know the answer, right? Why do I buy futures? got to be a logic. I said, well, to lock in some certainty and stuff. He said, well, you pay for an option like that, don't you? You end up paying for it. It's not free. So you could buy cash. You've got a choice. Why buy futures? And it made me think, which is a good thing. So I said, well, Russ, elaborate, please, would you? Because I'm not sure how to answer your question. He said, well, if you work with me, we'll track the price you pay on your futures against the cash price over a 3-month moving average. And if what you've paid for the futures exceeds your cash price over a 3-month moving average, you fire me. Wow. I looked at this. I thought, well, this is amazing. That's a great deal. And then I picked up a big report that literally was on the floor. It was a heavy thing. It was called the Crop Report. There were over 1,000 pages. I said, my current broker sends me this. Do you have something like this? He said, no. I thought, oh dear. He said, I send a 10-page summary with recommendations. I don't send a 1,000-page report to you as a mailman. And I looked at him and I said, Russ, please don't misinterpret what I'm going to say now. This is not a romantic comment, but I love you and you are hired. Now, that actually happened. He was selling soybean futures just the same as the other broker was. But he gave me a benefit I didn't have before. He made me a better decision maker. I remember at the next board meeting, I always used to report on futures purchasing. It's a very important thing when you're laying out a lot of money like that on futures. And I said, I have a new method now, showed this thing, measured against the moving average. And the chairman of Wells Fargo was on the board. I remember very well. He said, wow, I like that method. I can ask my currency traders to use that methodology to keep them honest in terms of not taking undue risk. He said, when did you think of that? I said, the other day I was staring out of the window and it suddenly flew into my head. I said, I told them about Russ Danson. And they said, oh, bring him in here to give a talk. Well, that never happened. But, that story really awakened my thinking. You look at the airline industry. Let's look at Singapore Airlines. You go from New York to Singapore. A number of other airlines go from New York to Singapore. Similar time frames, similar aircraft. But Singapore and a couple of others charge a premium. You go from A to B, the time period, and they charge a premium. Why? Not because they've got more beautiful engines. You don't sit and stare out of the window and say, look at that lovely engine. I want to fly here again. I'll pay them a bit more. It's because of the value that you receive while you're flying. The great customer service, the wonderful food, the attention that you get. So there's no such thing as a commodity. And what I say to people is, the moment you call yourself a commodity, or your business a commodity, what you've just done is you've abandoned the pursuit of value creation. And that's a very bad idea.
So what do you say to someone that comes to you, Willie, and they say, well, we start with our vision and then we get down deep, dirty outside of that? Is that the proper starting point, vision, or is it finding your decisive point?
I run a little survey at the beginning of the seminars I run. And I give people a kind of a checklist of 5 things and say, what's strategy mainly about? Pick 2. And vision is one of them. Defining competitive advantage is another one. As an example of these. About 90% pick vision as the starting point. Now, this goes back to, ways of thinking about strategy that are right and ways that are wrong. My personal point of view is that starting with a vision is the wrong place to start because it's an inside-out statement. This is what we want to achieve. Now, the world doesn't care what you want to achieve. Customers don't get out of bed in the morning and say, oh, this company wants to achieve A and B. I think that's a wonderful aspiration. I think I'll go and help them by buying their stuff. They say, what's in it for me? So we never start there. We start with a winning proposition. How will we deliver superior value to the customers we seek to serve? Having defined that superior value, you can then say, if we do that outstandingly well, this is what we can become. That's our vision. But I'm not saying vision is irrelevant. I'm saying don't start with it. Start with how you're going to win the game. And then you can say, this is what we can become. Now people can respond to that, because if you remind people, oh, this is our vision, what are they going to do on Monday morning? Well, if they don't pursue a winning proposition, you'll never achieve your vision. So this thing of these definitions of a winning proposition are key. I've got a couple of other examples that I can offer you. I like Starbucks, for example, simply because I'm an addict, and the Starbucks winning proposition came from the history of, Howard Schultz going to these different places and seeing the coffee shops in Milan and the pubs in England and the experience that people were having, and not just lugging stuff, but having an experience. And so the winning proposition for Starbucks says, we're not in the coffee business serving people. We're in the people business serving coffee. Now, that's a great formulation. And if you go back before 2011 and you ordered your coffee, now mine happens to be a grande latte, single shot, blonde roast, extra hot, double foam. Got a list. And so, but prior to 2011, when that drink was ready, people would hold it up and say, who ordered a grande latte, single shot, blonde roast, and you say, that's me. Then a very enterprising barista in 2011, thinking about this winning proposition, we're in the people business, serving coffee, said, what I'm going to do when people order is to say, what's your name? And he said, my name is Ted. Okay, I'm going to write Ted on the cup with a Cokie pen. And then would say, when your drink's ready, Ted, here's your drink. How does that make you feel? How many things do you buy that come with your name on it? Now, headquarters saw this, and then they mechanized it. Now it's printed on your cup, and it happens worldwide 4 billion times a year in 30,000 locations. It has your name on it. Now, I've noticed in the last few months, in addition to that, William, here's your coffee. I go there twice a day, and here he comes again. Here's your coffee. And they now write on a Cokie pen, in addition to that printed label, have a good day, good luck, thanks for coming, something like that. So this people business thing they acted on. Very interesting, that to me. Now, my favorite magazine is The Economist. And I really like The Economist because it's a great interpreter of what's happening. And it has a winning proposition. Dead simple. All revolves around one word. We explain the world to our readers. We don't just report it. Now, that's where the value lies. And they do that much better than anybody else. But it tells people all the time, in all of their writers, all of their reporters, all of their analysts, without an explanation, we are not meeting our winning proposition.
So what's the best process then that you would suggest using to defining a winning proposition?
Clayton Christensen, no longer alive, he wrote a wonderful article on the Harvard Business Review called The Jobs to Be Done Approach. So the Jobs to Be Done approach says, let's examine a customer and a customer needs. I like to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs to see what's really important to customers. Identify jobs that customers would love to see done that are not done well now or not done at all now, and then provide the jobs to be done that satisfies that need. And I think that's a great way of doing it. And all the definitions I've given you now whether it's The Economist or Starbucks or other winning propositions, Amazon, define the jobs to be done. And the interesting thing is, I like that formulation. It makes it very practical. What's the job to be done in the eyes of the customer?
Mm-hmm.
Something, the missing piece. In retrospect, all of these breakthroughs in thinking seem to be obvious, but they didn't exist for a very long time. Cup holders in cars didn't exist for a long time. What's the job to be done? I read a magazine when I was first an executive in the US that something like 20% of all calories consumed in the US are consumed in cars. Now, I thought, well, I hope they're consuming our food products while they're driving. Auto companies saw the same thing and did nothing until Honda and Toyota introduced cup holders in cars for the first time, and their market share went up. Now try and buy a car without cup holders. People just laugh at you. The same thing with wheels on suitcases. Didn't exist before. Somebody thought about it. Now I go to a luggage store and say, I want a nice big piece of luggage without wheels. Something wrong with this person, right? It's obvious now. I think the most spectacular one for me of jobs to be done is reusable rockets that SpaceX is using. We step back and think about this. The prior method of sending satellites into space for GPS purposes, intelligence purposes, you need hundreds of satellites, not just one. And every time you sent a rocket up, you destroyed the rocket. Now, that's an extremely expensive thing. So Elon Musk came up with this idea of a reusable rocket. Now, that sounded crazy. It's never been done. The flights that used to take place in space shuttle, that had wings and it had wheels. A rocket doesn't have that. How are you going to land it? He said, well, we'll land it on its tail. Well, people thought it was laughable, but it's a reality now. That was the job to be done. What a massive piece of saving of reusable rockets repeatedly sending these satellites up into space. It's kind of a breathtaking example. What's the job to be done? Sometimes the gap is a massive one, but the innovation happens. It happens like that over and over.
Okay, you mentioned winning propositions from Starbucks, Amazon, The Economist, etc. What are some of the lessons we can learn from these winning propositions? What can they teach us?
Number one is simplification. None of these winning propositions uses buzzwords or acronyms. They speak the language of the customer. The customer reads that and says, yes, I want that. Not, please explain it. It's too complicated. Simplicity is really hard work, but it's attention getting. We've got to be able to strip down everything to its complete essence. So that's the first thing. The second thing, as I mentioned, it speaks the language of the customer. And the third thing is, if you think about all of those, all of them describe the benefits the customer will receive. Not what we will do, but what they will get by way of benefits. So it reminds us that competition happens through the interaction of benefits. My benefits are competing against my competitors' benefits. And the ones that are most valuable win the game. It's all about defining the benefits the customer will receive. That then becomes the rallying cry throughout the entire organization that informs what people do through every single function, every single day. That's the unifying factor. When we talk about silos existing, all doing their own thing, it's because they have no central mission that says every decision we take in this function, regardless of what it is, must respond to that winning proposition. And it's a team sport. All functions must work together in service of creating that winning proposition. So we often talk about alignment and all of these kinds of things, but if you don't have clarity of whatever you want to call it, the mission you're pursuing, which is the winning proposition, these silos will fly apart and do their own thing, just like a sports team where all the stars are playing for themselves and nobody's playing according to a unifying game plan. So that's the magic of these winning propositions. And they define the job to be done internally in response to the job to be done externally for customers. Hi, I'm Willie Pietersen. Leadership is not about wielding power. It's about authenticity and inspiring others to achieve a shared purpose. Excelling as a leader is a continuous journey of pursuing ideas that matter as the environment shifts and new challenges emerge. Thank you for watching. Please share your ideas by leaving your comments below. We learn best when we learn together. And if you've enjoyed this discussion, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Thank you again.